Okay, so let us now turn to another topic that is associated with dharma, something that is discussed, a lot. It is not a core of dharma, but it is certainly one of the fallouts of some of the principles that we discussed earlier. So, what is varna? Is it a prescription? Is it a description? Is it both? Is it neither? So, let's kind of quickly dive into that. So all of the people should be aware that there are four varnas, which is the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. Yeah. So if these four varnas exist, who exactly is a Brahmana? Who exactly is a Kshatriya? Comes out as a question, and the answer is quite simple. One within whom Sattva Guna operates for a significant amount of time. So the one is Sattva Guna Pradhana, and backed by Rajoguna, such a one is a Brahmana. One in whom Rajoguna is Pradhana, but it is backed by Sattva, that person takes on the role of a Kshatriya. Vaishya is Rajoguna Pradhana backed by Tamas, and Shudra is Tamoguna Pradhana. Yeah, so guna determines one's varna. That's the way it sort of is understood or conveyed within the Shastra. And if this is so, let's take our own persona. Are there Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra within us itself? Absolutely. So the Shastras actually state that buddhi, yeah, which is the jnana principle acting within us, that is the Brahmana within us. Our mind or mana becomes the Kshatriya, Prana Shakti, which is the Vaishya, and Sthula Sharira is the Shudra. So within our own system, we have all the four varnas operating, and all of them operate in parallel. So none of them operates alone, so to speak. It operates at a certain point of time. At certain times, buddhi is dominant. At a certain time, sthula sharira is dominant. But the point is, all four are collectively required for the functioning of the body. So this is the way varna can be seen within our own selves, given the sort of guna orientation of each of these parts. Taking further, if one looks at Varna, even Pakshi and Vriksha, they are also expressed as having a certain Varna orientation. So therefore, the pigeon as well as the people tree are referred to as the Brahmana trees, the hawk and the neem tree as the Kshatriya trees, a kite or a tamarind tree as the Vaishya tree, and the crow or the babool tree as the Shudra tree. So this is how, I mean, crow as the Shudra Pakshi, and Babool as the Shudra Vriksha. And why it is that way, one can dig a little deeper into the properties which they display primarily, and therefore we end up classifying these sort of living beings with a related varna, so to speak. So the question then comes, okay, all is good. We understand the guna orientation, which is the determiner of what varna one sort of is aligned to. So what happens? What happens? What is the sort of journey one takes? Because what we have is this idea of gati, right? So every life is a movement, and we kind of born, we live, we die, we go to a uttama loka or an adhama loka, then we come back again, we again take one of the births, and then again that gati continues. So life is meant to be a continuous activity in motion, and life doesn't end, obviously. With the dying of the person on earth, one kind of moves on. So what are the gati that a brahmana takes, kshatriya takes, etc.? And it could be any gati, right? But if the brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, and shudra, they do the dharma of their own sort of lives, of their own varna, then what happens? And this is within the Vishnu Purana, a fascinating sort of a bunch of shlokas are there which actually state a brahmana goes to the pitru loka, a Kshatriya goes to the Indra Loka, a Vaishya goes to the Vayu Loka, and a Shudra goes to the Gandharva Loka. All these are, mind you, Uttama Lokas, which is lives led well with Dharma on earth will take you to a good place. Yeah, effectively, all of them can be seen as in a composite way, all of them are Swarga itself. And what is interesting though is since Brahmana is Sattva Guna Pradhana, and Brahmana's karma primarily as a Brahmana is to take care of the society, they therefore, by virtue of living that dharma, will continue to do that dharma, where they go to the Pitruloka, and in the Pitruloka again, they do exactly what they have been doing when they were on earth as a sort of a Brahmana. So there is continuity because Pitruloka are supposed to be caretakers of entire all beings actually. So in all the 14 lokas, Pitrulokas are supposed to be the caretakers. Same goes for Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. They take to the loka which is aligned to their own guna. That's what Vishnu Purana says. Okay, and if this is so, then this becomes relevant, which is the picture that you see on the right. It is a conversation which Yudhishthira has with Nahusha in the Mahabharata, where Nahusha asks this question to Yudhishthira, which is, tell me, how does one determine the Varna of somebody? And the sort of question further says that it is difficult to determine because people have been intermarrying uh, across Varna for thousands of years, and this is, mind you, at the time of Mahabharata itself. There's been so much of intermarriage that how does one determine whether a person is a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra? That is the question that is put to Yudhishthira, and Yudhishthira says one's own Kula, which is one's family, the family that one is born into, cannot therefore be the determiner of what varna one has. One's own guna orientation determines whether a person is Kshatriya, Brahmana. So it's very clear from the Mahabharata time itself, and this comes out again in the Gita also, that one's guna determines what varna one should be seen as being aligned with, not one's kula. And therefore this image should be easy to sort of comprehend, that in the Vishwa, we may be born to a certain kula, yeah, our family lineage, meaning our ancestors who are doing a certain karma. We kind of take on to, we are born in that particular kula, and therefore some of us, though that has changed in the last 100 years or so, some of us continue the profession of one's own kula because they were done by the sort of ancestors preceding us. So one may be born in a certain kula. One may, however, take on to a certain jati, which means we may be a kula of a certain kind, but what determines our jati is the professional group that we are associated with. So one can be born in one kula, but the jati may not be aligned to what that kula has been doing in general. Jati is our own sort of orientation or any other circumstances which may have taken us to a particular jati. Jati is effectively a group, and in this context, one can say a professional group. But the varna can need not be connected with kula or jati. It is based on how one conducts oneself. So for any life, all these three are therefore inevitable because all of them have a guna component associated with it. However, one who reaches the Satchidananda Sthiti, or one who remains in the Satchidananda Sthiti even while living, such a person is living in a Nirguna Sthiti. Yeah, and therefore that is beyond guna. It keeps coming up again and again in the Shastra. So, Varna, Kula, and Jati associated with life, whereas life in the normal world, so to speak, a worldly life, but the one who is an adhyatmic oriented person, their goal is not to be born in a certain kula or be aligned with a certain jati, or even show preference to any varna. They would like to move towards what is called as a nirguna sthiti, which is the paramatma sthiti. So if this is the way it is sort of clear, then the point that is to be understood therefore is beings of all varna will attain to satya. And how do we then display that? So again, we have another sort of a flow chart, if I can use that word to describe this. So we have chaturvarnya. If they do what is called as nishkama karma, which is karma done because it is meant to be done without any sort of karma associated with that particular karma, they will attain a moksha sthiti. Simple and easy, irrespective of what varna one is sort of aligned with. But one who does sakama karma, which is kama that is aligned to dharma itself, in that sort of a state, they will go attain to what is called as urdhva loka, which is better loka, is their gati, which we touched upon in the previous slide. But those who do jada karma or prakritik karma, which are more aligned to their own samskaras, and which are it are not aligned to dharma, it is more Prakrita or Laukik in nature, they will go to the Adhama Loka. So this Gati chart applies irrespective of what Varna one is sort of expressing. Okay, and therefore one may call a person who is sort of aligned to Nishkama Karma as a Jnani, one who is aligned to the Sakama Karma, which is aligned with Dharma as conveyed in the Shastras, and does it to the T. That such a person can be called as a sadhaka, because sadhaka eventually ascribes to attain the Jnani state. So because they are aligned to Dharma, they will attain to the urdhva loka. The one who is aligned with the prakritic karma, wherein they believe that materialism is only that matters and nothing else, then they will certainly go to the adhama loka after their life sort of ends on earth, so to speak. And the sort of we can look at them as an asura, or as an asura or a rakshasa. Yeah, these are not sort of good or bad; they are just expressions of one's own guna orientation itself. Okay, and am I kind of faffing away? So I thought I will just kind of display what is stated in the Gita itself, where Bhagavan says, and this is from the ninth chapter, that O Partha, even those who take janma as lower beings, and by lower beings it means plants and animals, or as three Vaishya Shudra, if they have taken sharana in me, they will attain to the highest gati. Yeah, sharana in me is effectively a nishkami, so to speak. So they will attain the highest gati, which is the moksha sthiti. What again to speak of the brahmana and the rajarshi, who will also therefore attain the same thing as any other varna. So very clearly conveyed. There is no room for doubt at all. Whenever one reads this, one should connect with what Bhagavan is actually stating. If you look at the other one, which is the Vyadha Bodha, the Vyadha in the Mahabharata, again, for those of you who are not familiar, one can go to internet and type Vyadha Bodha, and the story of the Vyadha, and then you can read the entire story there. When the Vyadha is giving a lecture to a Brahmana actually, and Vyadha, by the way, means somebody who's a butcher. So the butcher actually tells the Brahmana who comes to him as a student that if a person endued with sattva guna is influenced by laukik buddhi, yeah, we earlier referred to on the left hand side as prakrita karma, such a one will suffer dukha. Equally, a man may be born as a shudra, but if he is endued with sadguna and established in it, he will attain to the state of Vaishya or of a Kshatriya or Brahmana. So, very clearly, one's behavior determines one's Varna is sort of there right in the Mahabharata itself, what to speak of any later constructs. Yeah, so this way Varna should be understood. Okay, but this is all there is. There is another sort of a thing that would be useful to talk about in this connection, which is that we do various kinds of karma. And the 17th chapter in the Gita says that begin your karma by chanting the words Om Tat Sat. Why is it that is sort of conveyed here as to why should we chant these sort of words? So let me kind of give a sense on that, because it's connected to the Varna thing itself. He says that when we start every karma with Om, what we're essentially doing is to connect with how Srishti itself began. Because Srishti itself began with Om, as we saw earlier, and therefore when we sort of do any new karma, we should also chant Om just like Brahma chanted Om at the beginning of Srishti itself, which also means that we are attempting to align our karma with the sankalpa of Paramatma itself, because that was the basis for Srishti itself to kind of kick off. Yeah, so that is the intent. When we utter the words Tat, what we are stating is that the performer of the karma is not me, the Jiva. It is being done for Paramatma. It is being done for the Tat. The Tat is the Paramatma. That whatever outcome then comes about, it will go to her only. So this removes the benefit of that. This removes ahankara in me while performing the karma. Last, when we utter the word Sat, what we are stating is that our karma will be for Satya only. Since Satya is our Swarupa Sthiti, we will undertake this karma as an Anubhava to access our own Sat Swarupa. And the stated karma will then become Sanatana, eternal. Or more appropriately, it is an expression of the eternal. And any action we perform will therefore be, if we utter these words with the sort of meaning imbued with it, it will be such a karma after chanting Om Tat Sat will be done from the vantage point of Sarupa itself, our own Sanatana Sthiti. That is the idea. And therefore, effectively, all such actions become a Nishkama karma, which will take us or move us towards closer to our Moksha Sthiti, which is our own Sarupa. Yeah. Now, it applies to any Varna. Okay, so if you're good so far, is that all there is? I can talk about all the goody goody aspects. One should also talk of some of the aspects which tend to sort of confuse and have created conflicts in the past and keep creating even now. So let's kind of take up an interesting idea that keeps coming in various Purana, which is what is the vocation a person who is aligned with a certain varna should perform that has been prescribed. I mean, I picked this from the Markandeya Purana, but it's there everywhere. I will also call this सहयोग चाहिए slide because जितना मुझे समझा मैंने sort of बनाया है और अच्छी तरह से अगर प्रस्तुत कर सकते हैं तो I will be glad if somebody can help me do that. So the Varna, what is the dharma of somebody in that particular Varna or somebody who's sort of aligned with that particular Varna, and what should be the karma such a person should perform to sort of subsist, to earn sort of income. Yeah. And the Shastras actually say something interesting. It says that the dharma of a Brahmana is to do dana, to do yajna, and to do adhyayana. Adhyayana does not mean the kind of study that we do today. It's the Veda Adhyayana. That is what the Shastras actually prescribe as mandatory for a Brahmana. And what should they do? How should they sort of live their life? What should be their income source? They can be a Ritvik in a yajna. They can teach the Vedas. So teaching has been sort of given to the Brahmana. And they can take dana from a dharmic person because that's what is so they should be on the lookout for people who are leading a dharmic life and take dana from them only. And this is all that a brahmana should do, is what Markandeya Purana and many other Puranas sort of prescribe. What about Kshatriya? Again, their dharma. And when we mean, what do you mean by dharma here? Dharma means the minimum thing that they should perform. They can do many other things, but at the minimum, this is mandatory. And again, we see dana, yajna, and adhyayana as the sort of mandate for a Kshatriya too. Yeah. And what should be their income source? They should take to the governance, or they should take to arms to protect their own kingdoms and country or the world itself in whatever form they can do as their role, so to speak. Okay. Vaishya, again dana, yajna, and adhyayana come. So no difference at all. All three minimum mandate is exactly the same. Okay. And a Vaishya, of course, has been prescribed to kind of focus on agri, commerce, animal care, and through those activities they should earn whatever income they get. Again, why are these sort of prescriptions being given? Kshatriya is rajoguna pradhana, but backed by sattva. That's what we said, right? So they are effectively using their rajoguna orientation for protecting, so to speak, and therefore kshatriya has been asked to kind of take on that particular role. What about shudra? Shudra, interestingly, dana yajna is common for a shudra also as a minimum mandate. That really doesn't change, but there is this thing of what has been prescribed that they should be doing seva of the other three. So seva of the dvija. The first three are referred to as dvija, and the fourth is supposed to do seva of the dvija. And what should be their sort of source of income? They have hard skills, right? Because it's tamoguna pradhana. So they have hard skills like construction, carpentry, architecture, all these sort of domains, plumbing. I mean, you can name any physical activity which they have a natural aptitude for because the dominant guna within them is tamas. So they should, pick up vocations which use their own hard skills, or they can do kray vikraya of whatever samagri that they have with them, and therefore that becomes a shudra karma. So how does this look? I mean, very clearly, minimum mandate of dana yajna is for everybody. The third one, adhyayana, is only for the first three. The fourth one is supposed to do seva of the dvija. Now, does this look good? Because it's all fine. Dana yajna is understandable, but why should shudra do what seems like slavery of the other three? That's how one can actually read. And is that what rishis had in mind? Is what one can probably question, because if rest of the texts are saying all the sensible things, here why have they sort of called out as seva of the Dvija? And one way we can see this to kind of explain why this has been stated is to get back to the basics itself, which is what do we mean by dharma itself? Yeah. So, what is the dharma? The primary dharma of everybody is to protect everybody else. Yeah. So, a Brahmana does studies the Veda, and using the knowledge of the Veda, they do all the yajna kriyas and all the other things to protect, to guide, to protect, to advise. Effectively, a Brahmana is also pushed in the Shastras to help the society. Yeah, they're not doing it for themselves, they are doing for helping the society. A Kshatriya doesn't lead for attaining fame and name. Kshatriya leads for again protecting the nation. Yeah, so protection of others is innate to everybody. A Vaishya adds value in the sense that the Vaishya is able to say, gold has this value, for example, or any other product has this particular value. So the whole valuation deal is something that a Vaishya innately does, but that valuation is again to help the society. So they're not doing it for themselves. They have an innate skill to kind of, identify the value for everything that is present in the world, and that valuation logic is sort of spread out all across the world so that the world runs the economics, all those aspects run properly. So Vaishya's role also therefore becomes seva of everybody else. And Shudra has an innate orientation towards hard skills, as we said, right? So, if hard skills is what their innate orientation is, if they are tamoguna pradhan, again they will provide labor, and labor again is for everybody else. So, in a sense, whilst the seva of others has not been called out specifically, everybody else also has to do seva of the other. So that's in the which we earlier talked about the Pancha Mahayagna. One of the karma is Manushya Yagna, right? So Manushya seva is something that is imbued with everybody. But still, one may say, no, this doesn't seem all right. Why should this thing be called out? It does appear as if this one who's got a Shudra orientation should be slave of the others. Even though all of this is understood that everybody is technically, a Raja is also supposed to be seva of the Praja, all of that is sort of understood. Why is it that this has been sort of called out specifically? So let's, get back to the basics. Is this a limitation of choice? Is this really to be seen as a limitation of choice? So one may ask, why should a Brahmana not do agriculture? Why should a Shudra not do, teaching Veda, for example? Why is it that they should not do that? So this is indeed a limitation of choice in that sense, right? But why is it that this has been prescribed? So let's again come back to the basics. The basics are, where does Varna come from? It comes from Guna. Where does Guna come from? It comes from Samskara. Where does samskara come from? It comes from our own karma. Yeah. So in a sense, what varna we display in our orientation on day-to-day life is a fallout of our own karma only. So it's not somebody else's imposition in that sense. It is our own karma that takes us to a certain varna, so to speak. So if this is understood, then let's come to an example which hopefully can sort of convey what was the intent of the rishi behind this sort of a prescription. Okay. So the vocation linked to the aptitude piece. Yeah. What does it mean? Again, a Sahyog Chahiye slide. So let's take a modern construct of a corporate. And this is the only place where I've used a sort of a modern example. Otherwise, as you would have seen till now, I've steered away from using any sort of modern examples. But let's take a corporate. So the corporate has four anga, if I can call it that way: a board, the CEO, the marketing design department, the product department, and the support, who are sort of supporting all the other four. Now, if you look at it this way, who everybody has a certain boundary within which they operate. So the board itself has a boundary, which means they can't go against nation's interest. They have to make sure that the local law is sort of kept in mind when they sort of define a strategy for the organization. A CEO has to focus on the vision of the shareholders. So a CEO cannot depart from what the shareholders are seeking. And equally, the strategy drawn out by the board, the CEO is supposed to translate that into a clear mission and a specific vision to translate that strategy into something more concrete. So that's the ambit of the CEO. So there is a boundary, which is, like a Lakshman Rekha of sorts for the CEO also. Okay. What is the boundary for the marketing design? They have to be tuned with the company's strategy, and they have to focus on the customer interest. So there is a boundary for them also. In a sense, they can't depart from this particular boundary. And what about the support function? Support functions is just supposed to follow the policy and procedures, or their immediate manager. So what is being conveyed here is that even in the modern world, there are boundaries within which people sort of work with, and these boundaries can be termed as simplistically a lack of choice. But these boundaries have been defined because they are tuned to the role which those people who in those roles are sort of engaged with, and if they stick to this boundary, then it will help in the overall effectiveness. So somebody who's marketing design should not get into this, and somebody who's in the board should not get into this, because whatever is innate expectation from the role, if they perform well, collectively the company will do well. So that's sort of easily understood. Okay, now if this is clear, again let's apply the buddhi, mana, indriya, and sharira, which I said is the brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, and shudra. I used prana earlier and indriya here, but both prana and indriya are sort of related with each other. And buddhi is sattvaguna, mana and indriya would be rajoguna, and sharira is sort of tamoguna. Uh, just as a sort of an aside, if you see, it's sa, ra, and tha, and if you kind of combine this together and put a e matra towards the end of it, it becomes three. Okay, what is this is actually stating is that everybody in Loka Vyavahara is a Stri only, because it's all of us are imbued with all these three gunas, and all of them are performed in a sort of a continuous form, expanded to E becomes the expansion matra, and therefore Stri is what everybody is. All jivas are Stri only. Okay, this is an interesting idea. I thought you should keep in mind when where so there's a difference between mahila, who can be termed as a female, but as three can be applied from an adhyatmic lens to both males and females, because all of them are imbued with all the three gunas. Okay, so coming back, and this is a speculation just to kind of convey the point as to what probably rishis may have had in mind, that the board supposed to be sattva pradhana, the CEO is supposed to be Rajoguna Pradhana, and so is the marketing design department, which is supposed to be again Rajoguna Pradhanam. But while here the controlling aspect, leadership, becomes primary, for the marketing design, the emotional aspect, because value is all about emotion, right? So emotion is Indriya, and therefore marketing design department again is Rajoguna Pradhana, but this component becomes dominant, and that's why we can say primary is Indriya for a marketing design department, whereas the executive, who the sort of other salaried employees, are execution people. So it's not that they don't have the other gunas, or they're not supposed to use the other gunas, but what is primary and fundamental is to just follow the others. Now, if we therefore say that in the modern world, uh, the sort of employees are sevaks of the other three, that's one way to put it. But that's the reality too, right? And if they sort of remove from themselves from their boundary, then they are sort of creating a challenge itself. Now, one may say, hold on, all of this is good, conceptually is fine, but today a salaried person can become a marketing person, they can become a CEO, they can become a board. But isn't that what Vyadha also said? That a Shudra can take on to a Vaishya or even a Brahmana, provided they kind of execute themselves that way. So, actually speaking, Shastras is speaking no different, that there is a choice, but the choice has to be aligned with one's own guna. Okay, and to kind of put it in a sort of a summary way of form, so that it's sort of easier to understand, that if you take up any entity, if the locus of the entity is prakrita, more revenue, more profits, and products being purchased by more people, so if that is the sort of a goal, then that becomes a prakrita orientation of that particular organization. Now, if that is the case, then what happens here? The focus of everybody who's sort of associated with such an entity is security, health, wealth, and fame. That's what their sort of focus is, which is a laukik expectation. And any varna in this situation, if the locus of the entity is prakriti, then any varna can take up any location as per the choice. Yeah, so the choice is very much available for an entity which where prakriti becomes the sort of pursuit that the entity is focused on. But the issue here is that the stress is high. And why is the stress high? Because people go as per their choice, because what they care for is the wealth, fame, and the security related aspects. But the question therefore is that if a person is innately a CEO, guna, which means, as I said, where the mana aspect is pradhana, such a person will get stifled if that person is asked to do a marketing, a product design sort of a role, because the innate orientation is leadership. Similarly, if a Shudra is put into the board role, their innate guna, which is natural to them, is tamas. Now, if that tamas person is put into this, they may get all the health, wealth, security, and fame, but it is not tuned to their own persona. And because it is not tuned to their persona, they experience stress. It goes without saying. And that is the reason why Shastras actually prescribe that if the entity locus, then becomes Satya, okay, then because the focus of everybody is Satya, all the Varna are comfortable to do whatever their sort of subparts are. Okay, and if they do the work which is intuitively their own aptitude, so we do come across people who say नहीं मुझे क्लर्क ही रहना है, मुझे आगे जाना नहीं है, and I'm very clear. Now that clarity is because they probably know what their innate guna orientation is, which is tamas, and therefore they don't want to do anything more. Yeah, it's not that they're lack of ambition, because they may do this job in an extremely fantastic manner to kind of support the company. It's not that that is the case. The point is they are very clear that what is their orientation, their own aptitude, and they stick to that aptitude. And if they stick to that aptitude, all varna are comfortable. That's what it is, because they are doing what their innate aptitude is. Now in this case the stress is low, since the collective goal of mutual cooperation is anyway there. And as I said, all the varnas, if they do nishkama karma, they attain moksha. If they do sakama karma, so they may want to attain some bit of security, wealth, and fame also. But it is not illegitimate, right? It is dharmic enough, and it's not adharmic to seek security, wealth, and fame to the extent it is required. And that's probably an important bunch of words. But to the extent it is required, doing that for is also dharmic, and that is also something that will take them to the uttama loka. So there is no problem even here, but the stress is low because they are sticking to their own innate guna orientation, and because they are doing that, all is good. Yeah, rishis probably had this in mind when they were prescribing. So firstly there's a description of the gunas, and therefore the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. And once the gunas are described, uh, and therefore Varnas are also described, prescriptions are made to align the guna with the karma one is doing, so that eventually everybody attains an uttamagati. And this, with this drishti, when one reads the shastra, it all sort of falls in place most of the time. People may make use of it in the real life, but that's a separate issue altogether. The reality is what is that rishis had in mind when they were talking of varna samskara. Okay, so I hope this has been sort of useful. And because to conclude, therefore, because shastra prescriptions are aligned to satya, not prakriti, they contain whatever they kind of contain. So if one reads the shastra in that way, I guess the varna aspect, which is not people do say that if varna is taken away, all is good. But varna is something that is innate to sort of prakriti, because guna is innate to prakriti. So how can you remove the guna? Even if you remove the word stop the usage of the word varna, gunas will remain. And if gunas remain, the chaturvarnyam thing will happen anyway. Okay, trees, plants, humans, the guna will manifest in a certain way. The question is, if they manifest in a certain way, what is it that is helpful to the sadhaka to attain the paramatma sthiti? That is the intent of the rishi. Okay. Okay, so that actually brings us to the end of this section as to what exactly what is the role of Varna within the Sanatana Dharma Parampara.